All right, this is Juan Soto. I am the president and founder of AccessUserGroups.org, co-founder with Ben Clothier, who is also online with us. Today's topic is creating dashboards and Access using SQL Server. And this is part of the Access with SQL Server group, MS Access with SQL Server group. You can find that group on AccessUserGroups.org. So please visit AccessUserGroups.org. If you have any questions, please put your questions in the comments. You can also wait until the end of the presentation. We'll have some question and answer time. Well, dashboards are near and dear to my heart. I love dashboards. If it were to me, we would put a dashboard at every project that we do at IT Impact. I'm also the president of IT Impact. We specialize in Microsoft Access with SQL Server. And I like dashboards because it brings together a wide range of data points together. And you'll see that in the example I'll provide. That would normally may take multiple reports, multiple runs, and it brings it all together in a concise view for the owner. And what I've done when I sell this to my clients, I say, hey, you start the system, you launch the dashboard, everything's okay, everything is green across the board, you can go golfing. Green light everywhere across, all your numbers, go golfing. Otherwise, you got to stay and work that day. So it really is a wonderful way to see where your business is at a glance. And what happens over time is that you get a sense for your business, right? So if you look at this dashboard day in and day out, over a period of weeks, months, you're going to get a feel for what is right, what is wrong. So that when you see something, one day you may see something, a number that's not quite right, and that's when you know you have to dive into the reports and get more information or find out what the wrong was wrong, right? So dashboards have several objectives. One of them is, of course, bringing sources together from different places. Number two, give you a health of the business. Number three, spot trends and see if there's something wrong. So here's our sample dashboard. We're going to be diving into this dashboard here. And this is a very small, simple dashboard. And by the way, I want you guys to know we're going to upload the dashboard, all the files, to AccessUserGroups.org later on this week or early next week, along with the recording of this. So just sit back, relax, listen to the presentation, and enjoy. But here you got a dashboard that's made up of 3 metrics. And, you know, usually you want to keep your dashboards to probably around 10 to 15 metrics. You don't want to overdo it because it gets too confusing and it can quickly overpower people, right? And so as a business, we all know new customers, very important for a business, especially if you have a business that drives on new business like ours at IT Impact. And so we got the metric new customers, and today we haven't had new customers. This week we had 1, this month 8, and so on, as well as any orders, right? So again, not unsurprising to see that we got a new customer, we got an order, we got a new customer, 8 new customers this month, we got 8 new orders, but here we had some repeat business this quarter with 25 orders and 12 customers. And then so far this year. So far this year, it looks like we're getting 2 orders per customer that we've acquired. So that's good. And not necessarily new customers all planning to do 2 orders, but old customers as well, right? And then order dollars. Here we didn't have any order dollars this week, and none here. This month so far, 20,000. This quarter, same thing. We have 20,000, and then for the year we got 51,000. Now this is data out of the Northwind database. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload the Northwind database to AccessUserGroup.org, which is a SQL Server database that I created. You're going to get that. You're going to get the sample access file. You're going to get the script that creates the dashboard metrics. You're going to get everything you need to go over this in detail at your leisure and implement it at your own Access database. So you're going to get everything you need to get going on this. So how many queries do you think it would take to create these stats? If you notice, I circled every query in the dashboard that runs. We run 15 queries. And so when you run 15 queries against a database, well, if it's a small database like this one, it's no big deal. We could have done this dashboard with Microsoft Access. But if the business has 150,000 records, 500,000 records, 3 million records. We had a client who had 20 million records in their database. You know, you're not going to be able to have a dashboard if you run it with Access. I mean, it's just not going to work. First off, if this is a 3-line database with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Imagine if this were 10 lines times 5 columns. Now we're talking 50 queries. And Access would just choke at that point and become unusable. The last thing you want to do is create a product that's unusable for your audience. So in this case, what we want to do here is we want to be able to push this work off to SQL Server, right? So today's topic is how to calculate these numbers with ease in SQL Server, return it back to Access, all ready and crunched and ready to go. And then we'll talk a little bit about some enhancements that you can do with this. So I'm going to switch the presentation now over to SQL Server. I'm going to show you the database. So like I said, I created this Northwind Dash using Northwind Access Database. I just uploaded to SQL Server, created this. And then what I did was I began by creating a regular procedure. So let me go ahead and open that procedure up so you see what I'm talking about. Usually when I start a store procedure, I usually start with something like this, just a regular query here. And I had asked Omar. By the way, Omar Rodriguez, thank you so much for helping me out with this. Also with Leilene. She also helped me out. They're both staff members. And please say hello, Omar, Leilene. If you're listening, please say hello. Dile hola. Hola en el comentario. There you go. Omar saying hello. Thank you very much. So half of this code is Leilene has. So if you have any questions in Spanish, by all means, Leilene can help you out with that. We call Leilene Access Girl. It's an internal joke here at IT Impact. But she loves Access, and she's great at this. She's also a web developer. And Omar is been with the firm now almost a year, and he does mostly Access with SQL Server work, and he helped me with this store procedure. So the first thing you'll notice when I create this is I have this procedure here in SQL Server. Now, the way you get to this, you click on New Query, right? So you select your database first, click on New Query, and then here you notice that I've created a variable of type table. Now, why have I done that? Well, two things. Number one is because you're getting queries from different sources, you need a way to store them in the store procedure, right? So first I'm going to query the order table. Well, first I'm going to query the customer table to find out how many new customers we got today or this week. And then I'm going to query the order table to see how many orders we got this week. And then I'm going to query the order table again to find out how many dollars those orders represented. So I'm running these queries, and as I'm running these queries, I am doing a insert into my table variable called dashboard. So here at the top, I declare my table variable, right? So it's declare dashboard as table. I like to say as table because in Access, as you know, when you do a variable, you say as, but in SQL Server, it would give you an error message. So you don't say as, but I'm still used to saying as. And this table has 3 columns: my metric, my time frame, and quantity. Now, my metric is where I put in the metric I'm measuring. So in this case, I'm putting in, for example, new customers, and my time frame is today. And so all this is doing is querying the customer table with date created equal to start date. Now, start date, it so happens on this day is today. So as you can see, actually, when I did this was November 8th, so today. This is hard-coded because when I developed this, I hard-coded. Now I have a procedure where you pass along the date, and we'll see that in a minute. Now, there's a reason why I'm showing you this raw first step, because it's a long store procedure. And what you want to avoid is creating this long store procedure and then test it. What I like to do instead is we test it as we're going, right? So, for example, I'll go ahead and highlight this first portion, right? This first portion gives me everything to the start date. And then I will highlight my first query, right? And then what I'll do is, at that point, is I'll do a select star from dashboard. So here, I'm going to say select star from dashboard, my dashboard table. So in SQL Server, you can treat this variable, which is a table variable, just like any other table you would in your database. So if I run just this, it should give me some results. Let me go ahead and do that. And of course, when I do hack stuff like this, I get error message. So let's find out where my error message is. And there is a problem here. Date only get date. Looks like I originally had this, and this was not working, and now user date, get date. This was a function that I was using, so I'm just going to set this to at user date. I know what happened here, and I fixed it in the final version, but I'll just fix it right now. All right, let's go ahead and try it now. So what I did there was it created a temporary table in the table variable in memory. It then established some variables, start, end date, and then it grabbed today's date from this user date, which I had hard-coded the procedure. And then it selected start date equal user date, and then it used that to calculate this first metric, insert it into the dashboard table, and then I return the results back. All right? So as I was building this procedure, I had my select start from dashboard as my last statement, and so I was checking things all the way, right? So if I were to continue with this, I would say, okay, you know what? I'm going to now I created this procedure, another query, which is new customers this week, and now I'm going to run everything from here. So as you're building your SERP procedure, you're running it, and make sure every query is working correct. And the other thing is you want to make sure that you know the answer before you run the queries, right? You as a developer, you're going to probably turn this into somebody to be using it, or if you in rare cases you might use it yourself at your own business. You want to make sure that these numbers are correct. So as I'm doing this, I'm looking at the table in Access, the raw table in Access, and I'm looking at the customer table and then checking to see which customers were created today. So if I go in here, I put in customers, and I come over here to the date created column, much here, and I'm going to say, you know what, I want to say equals to, date filters equal to today. I've got one customer. That's great. So that tells me that my queries are correct. If I come in here and I switch date created to somebody else, I'm going to put it here 11-1 here, 14, and I go back to my procedure and I run it there, again, I should get 2, right? Which I don't. So why did that not work? I got 11-11. I typed in wrong. Maybe it said 11-1 here. Just to do this, right click, it equals 11-11. Oh, I did the 11-1 instead of 11-11. That's what happens when some people can talk and code at the same time, and I have difficulty with that. All right, so there you go. Now I did 11-11. Now if I run the procedure again, it should come back with 2. Great. Now, this week, of course, is coverage from Monday through Sunday, and in the final procedure, you can set the start date. Omar put a nice line of code where you can say if your week starts Sunday, you can set that up there. All right. So you're building the store procedure as you go along. Once you complete the whole thing, if I were to run the whole thing here, let me go ahead and put this select from dashboard. All right, so as I'm building, I'm testing the whole thing, testing against my data, make sure everything's okay. And then I run the whole thing. I get all my metrics. Now, if you notice here, this doesn't look like my dashboard, right? In my dashboard, I got 3 rows and columns. So I'll show you how I get from this table here, the 3 columns to my dashboard by using a cross-tab query later on in the presentation. The fact is that probably your number one consideration is you want to meet with your client and find out what's important to them. In my case, I decided it was new customers, new orders, order dollars. We could further expand this by invoices created, payments received. It can, the fact is that there are some critical parameters that a business needs to know, a business owner needs to know in, day out. And I'm a big fan of Shark Tank. And those of you who are familiar with the show would know that the entrepreneurs will go to Shark Tank and pitch their idea, their business idea. And invariably they get hit by the same numbers, the same questions, excuse me. So Mark Cuban will say, what were your sales year to date? And Mr. O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful will say, and what was your customer acquisition cost? And so now when I go sell a dashboard to a client, I say, are you a fan of Shark Tank? And when they say yes, I say, well, you know, this is what this does. Well, you can go to Shark Tank with this dashboard and you would know the numbers right off the bat because you've been seeing these numbers day in and day out from your dashboard. Your customer acquisition costs. What were your sales to date? Number of customers you've obtained so far, right? And so having those numbers at hand is going to make you more knowledgeable of a manager or owner. So you want to make sure you meet with them and make sure these are important to them. Maybe a new customer is not important to them. Maybe they get a new customer once every few years. But what is important is the number of orders, right, that they get. Good. I think this is the most Lucy that we've ever had in one presentation, 35 people. So thank you so much for showing up today. I really do appreciate that. Okay, wonderful. So now I'm ready to create my store procedure. So one way to create a store procedure is, let me show you the final store procedure. So here, the final store procedure, let me just close this, and I'm going to say no to that. There we go. Okay. So this is the final store procedure. Now, I have made some changes to this, and so that's why there's an alter keyword. So basically, when you create a store procedure, you could create. Now, one of the things that we always recommend, the SQL Server community always emphasize this, is to not use SP underscore something, right? But rather preface that with user USP. The U means user, right? And you can use your own nomenclature or your own way of naming things. But it's usually people recommend USP. The reason being is you want to avoid having a store procedure in your database that has the same name as a system store procedure, because if you notice here, everything is run in SQL Server with systems with store procedures. So if you were to expand this, you see all these store procedures, they all start with SP. Well, if I have by chance a store procedure in my database that starts with SP underscore add underscore agent underscore parameter, that's going to confuse your SQL Server. It's going to be wondering, do you want me to run the system store procedure, or you want me to run the store procedure in your database, right? And so avoid that confusion. Two things: you name your store procedure that you create with ESP, and the other is you prefaces with DBO, right? So DBO dot, and then your store procedure is always good. And you know, some people go as far as to putting the database, and then .dbo, and then USP dashboard. So this was create, now it's altered because I made some changes prior to the presentation. And basically it's the same database, but except for one important thing, same store procedure. This time I'm passing along a parameter, one parameter, which is a start date. Now I've got a dashboard I can run for any day, right? So when I launch my Access database, I launch it with today's date by passing along today's date to the store procedure. So before I go to Access and show you how we do it in Access, one important thing I always emphasize is run your store procedure first in SQL Server. You want to eliminate any possibility that if it doesn't work in Access, you want to make sure that it works in SQL Server, right? So here what I've done is I type in exec, which is the command to execute store procedures, followed by the procedure name, and then I pass on today's date, which is 11. So when I run this, it runs straight in SQL Server. So if I were to copy this and use this in my Access database and it does not run, I know it's not a problem with the store procedure. I know it's not a problem with SQL Server. It could be a problem with security if I didn't enable security of the store procedure. So one thing you want to be able to check is when you go into your store procedure, the list of store procedures, that you are using the functionality, right? So what you want to make sure is that you set the security, right? So in my case, I'm the DB owner. It's no big deal. But when you create a store procedure, you want to make sure that people can run it. Now, in this case, it could be that the business owners decide, you know what, I only want certain people to see it, managers and above. Or I only want senior managers to see that stuff. I don't need anybody in the company to find out what my customer acquisition costs were, right? So you could be using some custom permissions. In this case, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the public role. And public is anybody who is a user in the database, not everybody in the internet, right? And I'm going to do the execute permission. And this is a relatively benign store procedure. You pass the date, and it crunches through the numbers. And so if somebody were to run it, the worst case scenario is they find out some information regarding the business. It's not that they can go in there and start changing orders or anything like that. Okay, so going back to view this before I move on to access. You got the set Canocan on, which you get every time you start a store procedure. By the way, if you want to create a store procedure with the template, you just right-click on the store procedure here and click on your store procedure, and that you'll see a similar template to this. And here's my declaration table, and my variable start date, end date, and year and quarter, and in quarter start date and quarter end date. So what Omar did there was he added all these variables for me, and then he calculates the variables based on the date that's passed along, right? Now, Omar, I want you to comment in there. What if I want to change this to Sunday? I'm not sure if this should be set to 0 or 7. I think it was set to 7. So if you can comment there, Omar, if that should be either 0 or 7 if I want my week to start with this. But right now I've got it to 1, so that's 1. I'm probably pretty sure if I want this week to start with Sunday, it'd probably be 7. But we'll find out from Omar there. And then I calculate my start date, which is today, without the time in there. And that's something that's critical. If your dates are stored by Access with a time component, right? So if I were to save a record right now, okay, Omar confirms that 7 this Sunday. If I save a date in SQL Server with a time stamp on there, then you're going to end up with all kinds of issues with calculating these queries. So keep that in mind, that dates are stored in SQL Server with a timestamp, and then when you run these queries in Access, it runs fine, but when you run in SQL Server, it doesn't catch all the records. So there's lots of solutions around there. There's a blog page that I use a lot for SQL Server functions that strip the time out of it. So if anybody needs that, you can find, I can pass along the link later on in this presentation. And then, one of the things we do is we calculate the year. So we can calculate the current year and the current quarter, right? So the quarter start date, quarter end date. So right now it's November. So our quarter started on October 1st, and it's going to end December 31st. So all this will do is we'll say, okay, the start date is October 1st, and that's end date is October 31st. Now you got to be careful with these calculations. I have not run this with when you cross the event horizon, which is January 1st, right? So once we do January 1st, then some of these queries might not work correctly. So it's always, you keep that in mind that you want to test when you cross that future January 1st, and now you've got calculations for this week, this quarter, and so forth. So when you start January 1st, this week, this year, this week, this year, this quarter are going to be the same numbers, right? So so it happens now they're different numbers because we got different quarter in the fourth quarter now. Great. So now that I have all my date variables here set, right? I did all my date variables set. Now I'm ready to calculate the queries. So here I go into the query table of the customers, and I use my start date, and I calculate the customers created this week using the between. And a lot of Access developers will be familiar with this. Using the between and here, we do that all the time in Access, right? Microsoft Access. This month, again, is also where the month date created, so we're equating the month 11 with the month of the user start date and year. And then customers calculate this order. They created between quarter start date and quarter end date. Customer created this year where we have the year, right? The year 2014 equal to the year of the user start date. So they created a field in the table for customers, and we calculate the year. And anytime you want to test things out, you can do Control-N as in Nancy and say select year, and then use get date, which is will get you today's dates, and then you can see how it works. So when I run this query, it's 2014. So what's going to happen here in this dashboard is equating the year, the date the order was the customer was created versus the year of the day it's applied. So this is all very straightforward stuff. It repeats over and over again, right? So once I finish with my customers, it's basically the same query and with a different criteria field, right? So in this case, it was date created. Over here, it's order date. Now, for disclosure, Microsoft created a database, so please don't give me any grief about spaces in my fields. I wasn't the one to create an upwind database. It's amateurish at best. At worst, it's amateur. So please don't take that on me. Take that on Microsoft. And so I do my customers, I do my orders, and then finally, I do my order dollars, right? And it's all being saved into the dashboard table, and then the last thing it does is it returns. Now, don't forget, this is important, right? Because if you don't do the select star from dashboard, what are you going to get? You're going to get nothing back. It calculates all these things, and then it deletes the table. That's the other thing I wanted to mention, is that this temporary table that you're creating here at the top of the procedure, that temporary table is for who? For the current session, right? So say, for example, you have a database that's used by 20 people, and they all come in Monday morning today. Today's Tuesday. Came in this morning, Tuesday. And let's assume they all fired up actually at the same time. So that's 20 people running the dashboard program simultaneously. And then some people might use a different date, start tinkering with the dates and do some custom analysis, which I'm going to show you in a minute here. Because this table variable is defined within the stored procedure, everybody gets their own table. Now, there would have been another way of doing this, which is using a temporary table instead of a table variable. And the differences are a little different. The temporary table is using the temporary database and is saved to the hard drive, whereas a table variable is saved to the memory to a certain extent, and that extent will depend very much on the type of SQL Server you're using. Now, right now I'm using SQL Server Express 2012. And as you well know, if you don't know, you're going to find out right now. SQL Server 2012 has several limitations. The Express versions has several limitations. Number one is that you can only use 1 gigabyte memory. Number two, you can only use one processor. So it could be running an 8 CPU server. It's only going to use one processor. And number three, the database size can only be up to 11 gigabytes. Now, we have yet to have any of our clients hit that upper limit. And when they do, then we just tell them, you guys got to cough up the $10,000 it costs for SQL Server, $10,000, $12,000, whatever that is. If they have millions and millions of records, I know they have money to buy SQL Server. But my point here is, we could have done the stored procedure with a temporary table. In that case, I would have commented this out. And in my very first query, I would have done an insert into, right? So if I would have come in here, and let me find here. So here I would have say select the blah 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 into dashboard from customers, right? And so what that does, it creates a temporary table. If I run this select star from dashboard, so I run this, all it does is loads a customer table into a temporary table in the temporary database, and then it just spits it out for me. I could have just done select star from customers, so it's the same thing. But there's two differences, right? So one is in memory, one is on hard drive. Now, the only way you're going to determine which one to use, you want to use the fastest one. And the fastest one may be this one because it's using memory. But you only have 1 gigabyte memory. So once you go up against that 1 gigabyte limit, now you need to, it's going to automatically sort to the hard drive. So those advantages you have in using a memory table like this will disappear. And the only way you're going to know if you run it both ways. So in this case, you do the insert into, and then it's a very simple change right here, right? I would comment this out to this first one we select insert to, into, and then I can run it forward. Now, it's always good practice to destroy your temporary table. So if you do create that temporary table at the end, you want to do the drop table pound dashboard at the end of the procedure. All right, the technicalities behind this. So always check if this thing runs really slow. I mean, right now it's running super fast, right? So when I execute this, it takes all of 0 seconds, right? But you know, if it takes 3 seconds, more than 3 seconds, people are not going to wait. Think about this. You're thinking, oh, 3 seconds, that's nothing, what? Well, let me do 3 seconds for you right now. 1001, 1002, 1003. See, 3 seconds is good, but if it starts going into 5, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, forget it. They're not going to run your dashboard. So you need to optimize your dashboard so it runs as quick as possible. And that could be by, instead of going straight to the tables, you may have to use views. You may have to use other store procedures. Whatever you need to do to make sure that this dashboard runs 3 seconds or less. Otherwise, they're not going to use it. They're going to complain. Okay, so I created my store procedure. I checked to see it's running okay. Now I'm ready to use it with Access. So how do I use the store procedure in Access? Now, if you were here last month, you know the answer to that. You can use it in 2 ways, with a pass-through query or with a code. So I already created the dashboard pass-through query here. I'm not going to go into all the details. I have this. And Lucy, if you could put the link to that video in the comments here from last month, that would be great. But you can go to that webpage, and we talked about pass-through queries and extensively and using store procedures in Access last month. But basically all I did here was I have my pass-through query, and I have my properties, and now all I need to do here is have my ODBC connection string here, and I use a DSN. So I went the cheap route and created DSN for this. I don't recommend we use DSN for any other projects. Everything is DSN-less, but for this presentation I did it. So now when I run this, I get these parameters, right? So if I were to change this to if I wanted to change this to another day, for example, January 11th instead, and there's the link to the recording. Don't go now, just save it for later. And here I do it for January. As you can see, in January, with not too much activity there. The problem with this approach then is you have to change the SQL code and, to run this dashboard for multiple dates. Now, I love doing dashboards for center. So here is the dashboard, how it would look maybe. And I'd like to thank Leilene for this wonderful job she did. And Leilene used a program to create these icons that we just love. So I recommend that, Leilene, if you could mention that in the comments, what program you used to create these icons. Leilene, and just does a bang-up job on decorating these things to make it look great. It doesn't even look like Access, I guess some of my clients tell me. But this is a typical startup page here at IT Impact that we design for our clients. So when the clients launch their product that they paid us to do, they get these buttons where they can use, like if they want to go to billing, click on billing, you want to see employees go there, so on and so forth, but they also get the dashboard, right? So when I launch this database, it's going to launch this form, and it's going to set the date there. So let me just show you that code real quick. On the open event of the form, I come down here on the open event, click on the, let's see, and here you'll see it does a couple things. Yeah, let me just show you that. It sets the date to today's date, and then it goes and modifies the dashboard query. I create this procedure called Modify Dashboard Query. So I go into that procedure here, and I use a QDF object. There's also a string variable, and I say, okay, execute this store procedure. Change the SQL of the query to exec USP_dashboard, followed by the single quote. Don't forget that. In SQL Server, you got to use single quote, not pound sign. Otherwise, you'll get an error message back. Followed by the date, and then followed by the last single quote. And then I create my QDF object. I use a SQL property, and then I set my QDF to nothing. So when the form launches, it doesn't execute the dashboard immediately. It sets first a date, and then it goes and gets the dashboard. And then so that when it queries, right, on the open event, it doesn't get the data on the open event. It gets that on the load event. So when you launch the form, it launches a form, it creates a date, goes, modifies the faster query, and then the form's load event occurs and loads the data. So here, if I let me launch this main menu here, and let me break that procedure so you can see how that works. So I'm going to break this here. I'm going to break it here, the unopened event, and I'm going to run this form. And so now it's stopped there, and if I press F8, right, it uses today's date, and then press F8 again. It's going to modify the dashboard query. I initialize my string variable, I initialize my QDF object. I change that, right, so if I hold str sequence, it's basically what I had in SQL Server with the single quotes around the date, don't forget that. And then I set the query object to nothing, and now when it executes that, then it's done, and it shows me form with my dashboard. Here I am a manager, right? And today is Monday, for example, right? I launched this Monday. But it so happens that I have a 24/7 business. So I want to see what happened yesterday, which was Sunday or Saturday, right? So Sunday would have been the 9th and Saturday would have been the 8th. So I'll come in here and put in 11/9/2014, press enter, and that executes the procedure by modifying the database query. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, how that works. I use the after update event of the field, and here it's this one here. So I'll break it here, and then I'll launch it. And when I launch it, I had the prior one here, so let me just keep going there. Let me just execute that, and now I'm back into my form with today's date, and now I'm going to switch this to yesterday's date and press enter. When I do that, the after update event kicks in, and I just modify my dashboard query again with the right date. So same thing as before, but this time I got to the 10th of November. And then I re-query the form, right? Because I changed the query, the underlying query for the form. That doesn't mean that the form itself will change, right? Oh, there's one last thing I need to talk to you about. So I'll do the re-query just to do that. Remember how when I run the stored procedure, it comes back like this? Yeah, it doesn't look like that in my form. I created a crosstab query, so let me show you that. So here's the crosstab query. When I execute a crosstab query, now you get the format that you see at the other one. So the way I did this was I did a shortcut. I went to create menu there. I clicked on the query wizard. I selected the crosstab query wizard, clicked on OK. I then selected my crosstab query, my dashboard query. I clicked on next. And then I selected my metric, and then quantity, and then click on next. And now I got a problem here. So 1 second here, my metric. Yeah, my metric, and then my time frame. Okay, yeah, my time frame, right? The columns, today's date, this week, next week, and then next. And then the quantity would be, I did the max quantity. Each one of them is unique, so it doesn't matter. I did the max there. And then it wants to know what the name I wanted to give it, and then I click on finish, and now I have my crosstab query, which is like the same one I had before. Now you'll notice that there's a total of quantity, which the crosstab query does. I ignored it. And what I did was I bound this crosstab query dashboard crosstab to the form. So I created a form. I'll go ahead and show you that, a subform. So this is a subform within a form, right? So let me just close this and open the subform. Don't want to say that. I only have 2 forms in this database. So when you get this package, it's only going to be 2 forms, the main form, the dashboard form. And then I just bound this form to the crosstab query. And I didn't use that total query, that total column, because it made absolutely no sense for all my metrics. And so, well, it would have made sense. I guess it would have made sense because If you add up, well, not necessarily, right? Because today is included in this week week is included in this month, and so forth. And then, so I bound the form, the crosstab query to this, and I just cherry picked and I rearranged the fields, because in the crosstab query, you get this month, this quarter, this week. I didn't want to see it that way, so I reorganized them to this. I just switched the fields around, right? So I got today, this week, this month, this quarter, then this year. And then once I did that, I added the subform to the main menu, and I was pretty much done with my example. And that's how we arrived here with this dashboard. All right. And that's that. So, a couple of things. Let me tell you about. If you love this presentation, please let us know. I'd love to get feedback from you guys, and I'd love if you went back to accessusergroup.org. And Lucy, can you pass along the page for this presentation, the blog page, where we talk about this presentation? Leave comments on the blog page. Great job. Liked it. Loved it. Hated it. I wish it was in Spanish. Whatever you want. Comment something. Love it. Hate it. Just say it. Love you to tweet about it, too. If you have a Twitter account, please tweet about it. What's your reaction to the presentation? I'm at jsoto22. You can also comment in our main blog, accessexperts.net/blog. Follow us on Facebook. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn. Very easy to find. And now we're going to open up to questions. So I'm going to open up the mic here. Okay, we have a few questions here. The first one is, can you arrange the order of the rows? Yes, you can change the order of rows by having a hidden column and then somehow determine that order, right? So, for example, you can do it several ways. Number one, you can, of course, modify the order property of the form, the subform. So you can say, well, I want this ordered alphabetically, right? That's the easiest one. So if I right-click here, I can say sort A to Z. The other one is you can modify the underlying record source for the form. So have SQL Server processes things and have SQL Server request numbers. When it returns it back to you in the dashboard query, then there you can modify, create another hidden column that you use to order it. So yeah, you definitely can arrange it. Not everybody's going to want to see, a lot of people may want to see orders for someone else. So that's a good question. Any other questions so far? There, you want any comment or any comments regarding the presentation tonight? Go ahead.
One question, yes. Why don't you use the crosstab query in SQL Server directly?
Good point. And you could do that. I believe that crosstab query is not available across all versions of SQL Server. Will you enhance my SQL Server? Now, I'm not a SQL Server expert. I always say that I'm an Access with SQL Server expert. But I believe the crosstab query, the pivot query, was something that came onto those scene later versions of SQL Server. But yeah, you could have done pivot on SQL Server and do the same thing I did here. So
yeah, but I think that most people use 2008 R2 or later. So the crosstab is in 2008 R2.
Yeah,
so that shouldn't be a problem.
Shouldn't be a problem, absolutely. Absolutely. Good point. All right. Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
How did you create that button? I love that buttons in Access.
Oh, did you hear that, Leileen? He loves your buttons. Yeah, Leileen is really good about this because, one thing that we always emphasize with our employees is it's got to look great. Otherwise, they're going to think it's crappy. Even though it's the best perfect database in the world, they're not going to like it, right? So we always emphasize the UI. And so in this case, we use that program, which the link is in the comments. And if you don't see the comments, click on the comments button and join me. And it's a free download. It's called Metro Studio. And you can go to syncfusion.com/download/Metro Studio. And there you get
that's the Syncfusion's. Oh, I have them. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yes. So when Metro, Metro came on the scene with Windows 8, that's all the rage now. And so now when we design Access databases for our clients, we use the Metro style. All right. Any other question? Ben, by the way, has a comment. One thing that Access Crosstab does better than SQL Server Pivot is that Crosstab query can be more dynamic and handle unknown number of rows and columns, whereas Pivot requires that you define all headers in advance. That's a good point, Ben. Thank you so much. So please keep that in mind, that when you use the pivot command, it may not work as well as you think because of the fact that you have some constraints there. So even though you could use Pivot in SQL Server, not necessarily the best. All right, any other questions or comments? Did you guys like the presentation?
Oh, yes.
I do not, yes.
Will you have any discussion about temp tables in the future?
Temp tables? You said T-E-M-P tables? Temp tables?
Yeah, the temporary tables. Like,
okay. Temporary tables as to how to create temporary tables in Access using SQL Server data?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually wrote a blog post on that. I don't know if you seen that or not. Is it because you saw my blog post on that?
No, I haven't. I'm a new user, so I just joined in. So.
All right, let me show you how you can search. My blog. So what you can use is when you go to Google, you can use the site keyword. So for example, if I say temp tables, site accessexperts.com, you'll get my blog. How to use temp tables in code for quick and easy analysis. That's one topic. The other one would be how to create access tables, temp tables, and access from SQL Server tables. Now, there's a really good reason for that, why you would use temporary tables. Now, first of all, I want to declare, before I get a lot of hate mail, that the concept of temporary tables and access does not exist. There is no such thing as temp tables. They're tables, right? They're all temp tables. But from a programming standpoint, from our program point of view, they're temporary tables because they exist here, and the next thing you know, they're not there anymore because they get deleted, right? Or they get emptied. But this post goes into detail as to how to create temporary tables by using this nice little piece of code I provide you guys. How to create a subroutine that uses create local tables. So good question. We might this might be a good topic. We can write the post next month. So thank you for the idea. Thanks, Robert. This is Mr. Robert that lives here in the Chicagoland area. So it's very well done. Thank you very much. Please don't forget to blog, tweet, or post your comments on Facebook and LinkedIn so that we can get some more people to come to the presentations next time. Any other questions, observation, comments? Any idea about next month? Oh, there it is, Robert. Okay, good. Any idea about what the topic should be next month? You guys would like to approach besides temporary tables? So one of the exciting things that we like to do is data sets. And unfortunately, I didn't cover much of that here today in this presentation, so I might do that in next month's presentation. Not next week. I couldn't do this every week. But the next week's presentation where we cover the concept of data sets. And what basically data sets allow you to do in SQL Server is to create a universe of data and then run SQL queries against it. So I think I'm going to have Ben create that presentation and do that presentation next month if Ben is so willing. So you can do that. And we have a question here. Hi, Juan. Would the Nexus procedure with many do command run SQL statements be an alternative or would also cause access to grind to a halt? Well, Richard, that's from Richard Love. Thank you, Richard. Great question. And the answer is that might work fine, right? It all depends on the quantity of data. It so happens that I want you to see how I do this because most databases, let's face it, databases are there to store data, right? So most databases will most likely have a SQL Server backend. And then, so I decided to do my example. But you could have done all these queries with this small Access database, and it would have worked just fine. And you could have run the do command run statement. It all depends on the network traffic to generate too. It's going to be much more, right? So think about this. Let's say, for example, 20 people launch your database, and you're having Access run that crunch the numbers. So that's 20 Access databases connected to SQL Server, asking for data across a multitude of queries. And now you just spiked your network traffic as opposed to having the query, all the queries executed on the server, and then bringing that data over the wire and back.
Yeah, that was my main reason for asking, because if you do the cross-tab on SQL Server, you get a much smaller data set across the wire. The data, are 3 lines of data instead of 20 or such things.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the same Richard Love that used to live in California and now lives in Michigan. Is that the same Richard? Oh, good. Richard's got a beautiful house in the mountains in Michigan, overseeing the lake, I believe. And Richard, I owe you a phone call. I know I owe you the phone calls. So definitely want to reach out with you. All right. Any other questions, comments? Do you guys want, this is a labor of love, and the comments and questions really help me, because I'm a social animal when I do these things. I love doing it in front of an audience, and I interact with the audience. And if you like these presentations, they're even much better when I do them live in front of an audience, because then I can do more jokes and make it much more funny or entertaining. But it's a little harder when I'm talking to myself over the wire here like this. But there's no more questions? Any more comments?
Will you be in California sometime soon? Or?
Well, I'll be in California. You know what? I'm just waiting for somebody to invite me to go over there. I love traveling. I just finished a road trip to Napa Valley with my wife this year. Absolutely loved it. So, if you need my services in California, let's talk. Absolutely. Reach out to...
So how would I get hold of you then?
Yes, you can get hold of me in several ways. You can call our office number at 773-809-5456, and Lucy will put that down in the comments. You can reach us through our website, accessexperts.com/contact us, and Lucy will put that in there in the comments as well. And you can reach me that way, and if you need our services, by all means, we do have a minimum 10-hour block that we actually pre-purchase, but you can use that. You can use it over several years if you need to, but we actually do pre-purchase on 10-hour blocks or use this for larger projects.
Can it be this year?
Yeah, we can. I have some time available to give you in December. So absolutely. So there's the phone number, 773-809-5456. Please call the office tomorrow or text Lucy. Who's this? Whose viewer is this? Who are you, sir? Can I get your name?
Yeah, sure. This is Tim from San Francisco. You answered one of my questions about the 10 tables on our website, where I wanted to use 10 tables and then use that table in other queries, but I still couldn't figure out how to do that. So I kind of research it.
I mean, to be totally honest with you, most of our work is done right. So we all we have clients throughout the world remotely, but sometimes you can't do it remotely. Sometimes you gotta come on site and meet with your client and do things. So
right, I would love you to do that. So I'll call tomorrow. We can discuss that.
Good. Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. I had a client give me a call last 2 weeks ago. They were using FoxPro, and they wanted to migrate all their FoxPro database, because FoxPro, I don't know if you're aware of this, is no longer being supported by Microsoft. And I believe it no longer runs on Windows 7 or Windows 8, one of those deals. And so, but their users all are expert FoxPro users. Everybody in the company, all 30 employees, they all know how to run queries in FoxPro. And they're going to fly me out to their office for a week of training, intensive training, how to do all the things they used to do in FoxPro with Access and SQL Server. At least they're thinking about it. They haven't decided yet, but they're thinking about doing that. So it's very interesting. We just had a client call us up that does nuclear plants. They have 2 nuclear plants in the southwest of the United States, and he gave us a call. They said, well, we want you to do a database for us. And I said, great. So no, I've never had a nuclear power plant before as a client, but great. How will we help you? Well, it turns out that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission requires us to keep track of cracks in the walls. And I'm like, okay. I got 2 questions for you. Number 1, why aren't you just fixing them instead of keeping track of them? And number 2, how many cracks do you have that you need a database? So the joke around the office is that I'm going to be the one going to a nuclear power plant because I no longer have a need to have children.
I've got really sophisticated program I created for many years for my manufacturing company, and it takes so slow. It takes up to a minute to run certain things. So I have to move to that direction.
Yeah, we'll be able to optimize the heck out of it. That's our specialty. When I first launched this practice, there was not a lot of information, and that's how I started accessexperts.com and the blog. The blog is mostly geared to Access and SQL Server. Now, I tell everybody I'm not a SQL Server expert, but I am an expert in the area of optimizing access with SQL Server. And there's some great information on the blog, but of course we make our money by helping, we make our living by helping clients like you. So always good. There's our Facebook page if you want to go ahead and I think also it's facebook.com/accessexperts. If you want to leave a comment. The thing is that our biggest issue with these meetings is reaching out to people, because there's a real hunger out there for people to learn Access, but it's hard for us to promote the meetings, so that's why we ask you to tweet and to blog about it and to spread the word. You'd be surprised how people find out afterwards about the meeting, and they call us, well, where's the recording? I just missed the meeting. And so, we'd love to have you guys tweet about this and promote it more. Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you again very much for coming out here. We really do appreciate it. And like I said, I am very happy. And this has been Juan Soto with AccessUserGroups.org. Have a great week here, and so long, everybody. See you next month again, second Tuesday of the month. So long, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.